It was just past midnight when I heard the shouting at first. I thought it was the television from someone's window down the block. But then I heard something sharper glass breaking, followed by a woman's voice raised in panic. I stood. In my kitchen, barefoot, still holding the chipped mug I'd been sipping from, the coffee long gone cold. The night was quiet otherwise. Too quiet. Then came the sound that made my chest tighten, a thud, like someone falling against drywall. And then the sudden. A hollow crack of a screen door being flung open. I moved toward my front window, just as the neighbor's porch light blinked on next door. Their yard sat dimly beneath it. Shadows stretched across the fence line, the old pine tree casting a crooked silhouette. And then there she was. Her. My neighbor. I didn't even know her first name then. We'd only exchanged nods once or twice when collecting the mail or taking out trash. But that night, I saw her like I never had before. She was barefoot, standing. In the damp grass like someone just ripped out of a dream, a loose sweater clung to her shoulders, slipping off one side to reveal a bruise forming like spilled ink just above her collarbone. Her hair was down, tangled, caught in the wind. She glanced over her shoulder once fast, like she thought he might follow. Then she stepped onto my lawn, slowly, like her legs were moving without permission. By the time I opened the front door, she was already halfway up the porch steps, soaked from the sudden drizzle beginning to fall. We didn't speak right away. She stood there on the mat, shivering, arms wrapped tight around herself. Rainwater dripped from the ends of her sleeves. I saw the redness in her eyes, the cut near her lip. She looked like she'd been running for more than just a few yards, more like years. Then she whispered, "Will you take me in?" It wasn't a question, not really. It was what you ask when you already know the answer. Or maybe when it's the last thing you can bear to ask out loud. I just nodded. I stepped aside. She walked past me into my home, quietly, slowly, without shoes, without a bag, without even looking back. The porch light flickered as the rain picked up. I closed the door behind her. The hallway light buzzed above us, and for a long moment we both stood in the stillness, listening only to the rain and our breathing. She didn't cry. I didn't ask her anything, not yet. I offered her a towel from the linen closet, and she took it with shaking hands, draping it around herself like it might protect more than just her skin. Her fingers trembled. Mine did too, but I tried not to show it. In the kitchen, I poured her a glass of water, and as she drank, I noticed the bruises again, how carefully she moved like someone used to flinching. I didn't know what to say. Maybe there was nothing to say. So I stayed nearby, just close enough that she could feel I wasn't walking away, but not so close that she'd have to retreat. And that was how it started. Not with love, not with promises, just with one broken woman on my doorstep, and one man too, alone, not to understand what it means when someone has nowhere else to go. The house felt different the next morning, quieter, somehow heavier, like it was holding its breath. I stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee into 2 mugs instead of 1. Hers was the pale blue one with a faded chip at the rim, the one I never used but never threw out. I didn't know why I'd kept it until now. She appeared at the edge of the hallway, barefoot, wrapped in one of my old flannel shirts that hung loose on her smaller frame. The sleeves swallowed her hands, and she kept tugging them down like she didn't want to be seen at all. Her hair was damp from the shower, and her eyes looked swollen, but she walked like someone trying not to crumble. "Coffee?" I asked. Gently she nodded, "Please." We stood side by side at the counter in silence, the only sound coming from the kettle's soft sputter and the rain pattering faintly on the windows. I passed her a mug, and our fingers brushed. She pulled hers away quickly, mumbling thanks. The kitchen had never felt this small, or this loud with everything we weren't saying. I tried not to look too long at the marks on her wrist or the stiffness in her shoulders. When she moved, she sat at the little table near the window, fingers curling around the warmth of the cup, staring outside like she expected the world to still be dark, like daylight hadn't earned her trust yet. I sat across from her. After a while she spoke. He used to break the quiet on purpose, said silence made him feel watched. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure I was meant to. She held something in her lap, something wrapped in a t-shirt. She unfolded it, slowly, almost reverently. Small. Photo frame with cracked glass. The picture inside was hard to make out from my angle, just shapes and smiles I didn't ask about. She traced the broken edge with her thumb. "I dropped it yesterday," she said softly. "I meant to throw it out before he got home." She looked up at me like she was about to apologize for being here, for still carrying a piece of that life, for not knowing what came next. I didn't let her. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Stay as long as you need. Seriously." She hesitated. "I don't want to be a problem." "You're not," she nodded, but I could tell she didn't fully believe me. Not yet. We made a quiet agreement after that, something unsaid, like most real things are. She'd stay in spare room for a while, just until she figured things out. I didn't ask for a deadline. She didn't give one. She just said okay, and stared back down at her cup. The room held on to the silence like it remembered how to do this, how to carry the echoes of voices that didn't shout, how to let two people sit close enough to feel each other's pain without making it louder. And Mai just watched her sit there in my flannel shirt, staring out at a world she wasn't ready to rejoin. And I felt something stir I didn't have a name for. Not yet. Weeks passed like slow-moving weather days that bled into each other. Not dramatic, just steady. We never made rules about how it would work, but somehow we slipped into a rhythm. She woke earlier than me, always quiet, always dressed before. I even left my room. I started cooking actual meals again. She folded laundry like she'd done it there forever. We didn't talk much about what had happened. It hovered around us, unspoken, like the creak in the hallway floor or the chipped tile in the bathroom, something that was part of the house now. Something you learned to walk around without looking directly at. There were rituals. Late at night, we'd sit in the living room and listen to the little radio on the shelf near the window. Static sometimes, old music other times, stuff that made her hum under her breath. I'd pretend I wasn't listening to her more than the song. We shared dinners without ceremony, just plates and forks, and the occasional glance across the table. She always finished eating before me, like she'd learned to be fast, and I always slowed down. It's like I wanted to drag it out. One night, I was buttoning my cuff before heading to the hardware store. When I fumbled, it somehow managed to snag the button halfway. She reached out instinctively. "Here," she said, already moving closer. Her fingers brushed mine. Lightly. Too lightly. Her face was near enough that I could see the fine lines around her eyes, and how they softened when she smiled when I made some stupid joke about how bad I was at dressing myself, how I should probably not own shirts with buttons at all. She laughed, genuinely. It was the first time I'd heard it fully. It didn't sound like a sound she was used to making, or like something breaking free. And when it happened, I felt it's a kind of pull that isn't physical but still makes the air shift, a weightless kind of gravity we didn't speak about. We didn't speak about a lot of things until the night the lights went out. There was a snap from the breaker, a hum, and then total darkness. I got up, found the old lantern we kept in the hall closet, and lit it on the coffee table. Warm amber light filled the room like something from an older world, shadows stretched across the walls. Soft and flickering. She sat across from me. On the couch, her knees pulled up, her arms wrapped around them. The silence wasn't heavy. Not yet. Then she said, "Can I tell you something?" I nodded, though I think I already knew it wouldn't be small. I used to think if I stayed, it would hurt less. Her voice was low, almost embarrassed. Like if I just waited long enough, maybe he'd change. Or maybe I'd disappear enough that it wouldn't matter. The shadows flickered behind her, soft lamplight catching the shine in her eyes. "Some nights I'd sit in the hallway," she said, "and I'd think, if I don't breathe too loud, maybe I'll be okay." I memorized which floorboards creaked. I learned how to cry without making sound. That's what marriage was to me. She looked down at her hands. "It's not the bruises I remember. It's the silence." I didn't realize I was gripping the edge of the cushion until my knuckles ached. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," she said. I need someone to know it wasn't always bad." Right. He wasn't always bad. Because I thought it was my fault? I swallowed. My voice came out quieter than I meant it to. You don't have to explain anything, not to me. Shh. She looked up then. Her eyes found mine and something in me cracked open. So I told her the truth I never planned to say aloud. I'm scared of being alone, I said. Not the kind where no one's around. It's the kind where someone is, and you still feel like you're talking to yourself. I've had relationships that felt more like echoes. You start to wonder if maybe you're the one who's hollow. She didn't look away. Neither did I. There were no tears. Not at first. Just two people sitting in the quiet, lit by a lantern that made everything look softer than it really was. But then her breath hitched. Mine did too. Something unspoken passed between us, heavy and warm and just out of reach. Still, didn't touch. Not yet. The flame in the lantern flickered like it had heard what we couldn't say. And outside, the power remained out. But inside that room, something had turned on. It started with a phone call. I don't know who told him, but somehow, somewhere her husband found out where she was. A cousin, maybe. A neighbor who saw her slipping out of my car at the grocery store. Small towns have long memories and even longer mouths. We didn't talk about it at first. I just noticed the shift in her. The way she hesitated before opening the blinds in the morning. The way she folded her clothes a little tighter, like she might have to pack them fast. She started wearing her hair tied back again, knit, controlled. Like armor. I caught her standing near the front door more than once, staring through the peephole even when no one was there. Her shoulders drawn up like she was bracing for a sound that hadn't come yet, and I hated that. I hated that the peace we'd built inside these walls could be undone by the shadow of someone she'd already escaped. One afternoon, in the kitchen, wiping the same part of the counter over and over with a damp cloth, she didn't notice me right away. Did someone say something? I asked. She nodded slowly, still wiping. The neighbor, Mrs. Dale, she said he's been asking around, said he's not giving up. I stepped closer, but didn't reach for her. I'd learned by now not to crowd her when she was unraveling. He can't come here, I said quietly. She looked up at me then, really looked. What I saw in her eyes wasn't fear. It was something closer to resolve, decision trying to find words. She set the cloth down, walked past me, into the living room. I followed. She sat down on the edge of the couch, her hands in her lap, late afternoon light slanted through the windows, touching the hem of her jeans. She took a breath, shallow and steady, and when she spoke, her voice trembled, but didn't break. Would you accept me? As your wife? I froze. She kept her eyes down like the floor might be kinder than my answer. Not for protection, not just because he's looking. I mean, really, if I asked Tiff, I wanted that. Would you? It was the first time she'd said anything about wanting to stay. I couldn't speak right away. The weight of the question, of everything behind it, sat like a stone on my chest. But then I walked to the bookshelf, pulled out my old sketch pad, tore a piece of paper from it lined, soft-edged, grabbed a pen from the drawer, and scribbled something curved and clumsy across it. I folded it, twisted it, rolled it into a ring, and then I knelt. I didn't say anything fancy, didn't offer a speech or pretend I had this all figured out. I just took her hand, the one that used to tremble and now held steady, and slipped a little paper ring around her finger. Her breath caught. Just for a second. It's not much, I said, but it's mine, and if you want it, it's yours. Looked at me like she was seeing the world through new eyes. Not perfect, not safe, but possible. Real. She smiled then, soft and shaking. I do. We didn't call anyone. We didn't plan anything beyond what we could hold in our hands, but we sat there for a long time. The two of us on the old couch with the sunlight warming our legs, talking about what we'd need, paperwork, protection, new locks on the door, a visit to the courthouse. A lawyer, maybe. She kept looking down. At the ring, turning her hand back and forth, the ink had smudged a little. It wasn't even her size. But she wore it like it meant something more than gold ever could. We weren't pretending anymore, and even if fear still lived outside. Softly at the windows, we'd decided something sacred in that room, that facing the world together was better than running from it alone. Thought for a few seconds, I heard the engine before I saw the car. It growled up our street just past midnight, headlights crawling along the curb like it was stalking something lost. I was in the living room, half awake on the couch, the lamp still on, her coat folded over the armrest where she'd left it after dinner. She'd gone to brush her teeth. I watched the twin white beams sweep over the curtains, felt the air change thick, charged like a storm pressing against the windows. She must have sensed it too. Barefoot, she hurried back in, hair damp from the bathroom sink, eyes wide. We both looked toward the door at the same time. Neither of us moved. The porch boards creaked one, then another. A heavy knock rattled the latch. It wasn't frantic. It was sure practiced, the way someone knocks on what they still believe is theirs. Before I could stand, she was already walking toward it, shoulders squared, hand raised for me to stay back. "Let me," she whispered. I followed anyway, 3 steps behind. When she opened the door, the night spilled in, cold and silent, except for the idling car at the curb. He stood on the threshold, rain jacket hanging open, face half lit by the porch bulb. His eyes flicked past her to me, hard and assessing, then settled on her again. "Come home," he said, like a command he'd repeated 100 times. Didn't flinch. The porch light trembled in the wind, and I noticed she was still wearing the paper ring. Its edges had curled, ink smudged by dishwater and sleep, but it glowed like silver in that fragile light. "I'm not coming back," she told him. His jaw worked. "You think hiding behind a boy makes you safe?" I felt the insult land, but she stepped forward before I could. The distance between them shrank to a single breath. She was shaking every part of her, but her voice stayed steady. "He's not hiding me." I left. "Stay gone." A muscle twitched in his cheek. The car's engine revved, impatient. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked, then went quiet. Time thinned to a wire. He started to reach for her arm. I moved. Not with fists, just forward, into the porch light. She lifted her hand, palm out, stopping us both. "Touch me," she said, "and we end this on the sidewalk, in front of every neighbor." "You really want that?" Tiny tremor, steel spine. His eyes flicked left, right, calculating. The street was darker than usual, but porch lights dotted the block like witnesses. Waiting to blink on? My phone was already buzzing in my pocket. Mrs. Dale must have seen the car. He swallowed something venomous. "You're my wife." "Not tonight," she said. "Maybe never again." She breathed in. "Leave." Blue lights rounded the corner. A beat later, siren off, but undeniable. He stepped back, face turning, mask blank. I heard an officer call his name, firm and distant, and saw the way his shoulders sagged the moment he realized this fight wasn't quiet anymore. Another knock, louder this time, came from the nerves in my chest, but she stayed planted until he turned away down the steps. The police handled it on the curb, voices too low to catch. We stayed inside, lights off, sitting side by side on the living room floor because the couch felt too soft for the moment. She didn't cry. She just breathed, one hand on the paper ring, the other loosely threaded with mine. When the cruiser finally pulled away, taillights fading, the house exhaled with us. I heard morning birds starting early in the trees. I didn't sleep. At first light, we drove downtown, the sky paling from charcoal to dusty rose. The courthouse loomed ahead, old limestone, softened by dawn, columns shadow-striped. She wore my flannel coat and kept the collar turned up. I carried the folder. With her bruised photos, his past arrests, the printed forms Mrs. Dale had helped us find online. The automatic doors hissed open. Inside, the marble echoed our footsteps like we were 2 heartbeats walking. Clerks in sleepy suits guided us through paperwork for the protective order. Names, dates, incidents itch, word pushing back the dark. Just a little. She signed first, pen trembling only once. When it was my turn to initial as witness, she touched my arm, a silent thank you, deeper than speech. We were almost done when the woman behind the counter glanced at our joined hands and the makeshift ring. "You know," she said, gentle, "you could file for a civil marriage today. Same office, no extra appointments. That matters?" We looked at each other. The question hung there, bright and reckless. I thought of how thin paper could be and how strong a promise felt when it was said aloud. She bit her lip, then smiled, small, incredulous, utterly alive. "Why not?" she whispered. 20 minutes later, a different clerk typed our names. Onto a certificate. No guests, no music, just the tap-tap of keys and the squeak of a rolling chair. The justice of the peace was a gray-haired man with kind eyes who asked if we had rings. I held up the paper band. Grease's courage. He chuckled softly and said vows didn't care what they were written on. We repeated the words slowly, carefully, like tasting something we'd never thought we could afford. When he pronounced us married, her breath left her in a laugh that turned almost to tears, and I felt mine do the same. Outside, the city was waking. Traffic lights clicked from flashing yellow to full green, birds spiraled over rooftops, and the sunrise spilled molten gold across the courthouse steps. Stone turned honey bright. Windows blazed. Everything looked brand new. We stood at the top, side by side, the certificate clutched between us. She lifted her hand, showing the little ring to the sky. The light caught the paper edge, and for a heartbeat, it shimmered like true metal. Her smiles, certain, was brighter than the morning. "Looks real enough from here," I said. "It is," she answered. Then quieter we are. "Below?" Us, the city hummed, indifferent and infinite. Behind us, the stained corridors were already swallowing the echoes of our footsteps. Ahead, the street stretched toward whatever came next. I laced my fingers through hers, squeezing just once. She squeezed back. The day kept getting lighter.